Y'all. So America wants to talk about debt forgiveness, student loans, corporate bailouts, farm subsidies. They'll forgive everything except the one debt that built this entire nation. We're talking about 400 years of free labor, stolen land, denied opportunities, and systematic wealth extraction. And they want to act like we're asking for a handout? Baby, we're not asking for charity. We're demanding what's OWED. Welcome to the most uncomfortable conversation America refuses to have. But we're having it anyway because somebody needs to pull these receipts. Before we dive into this monumental conversation, let me stack some facts for y'all because we don't do emotional arguments without empirical evidence in this house. We're talking about the Homestead Act of 1862 that gave away 160 million acres of land that black people were systematically excluded from claiming. We're talking about the Federal Housing Administration redlining policies that started in 1934 and lasted until 1968, denying black families access to home ownership and wealth building. We're talking about the GI Bill of 1944 that excluded black veterans from educational and housing benefits worth billions in today's dollars. We're talking about documented wage theft through sharecropping systems, convict, leasing programs, and employment discrimination that lasted well into the 1970s. These aren't theories. These are documented federal policies with congressional records, Supreme Court cases, and government archives.
Definitely a hard pill to swallow, especially when you're presented with the facts, the receipts. Hell, you even have access to look the information up yourself. You know, maybe it's easier to consume when it's presented by an idolized debater who pulls his facts out of his ass. And his words are taken as gospel. Or is that just me?
The Brookings Institution, Duke University, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis have all published studies calculating the economic impact of these policies. We're talking about wealth gaps that compound over generations, lost opportunities that multiply across decades, and systematic exclusion that created the largest wealth transfer in human history. From black families to white families, from black communities to white communities, from black America to white America. Now, I know some of y'all are thinking, here we go again with reparations talk. But let me stop you right there. This isn't about guilt. This isn't about blame. This isn't about making white people feel bad. This is about math. This is about economics. This is about justice. This is about paying what's owed, just like any other debt in America.
Exactly. And a debt that's owed is a debt that should be paid. For example, let's say your grandfather was owed $1 million, right? And he died before that $1 million was given. What do you do with the $1 million? Do you just say, hey, it's lost, better luck next time? Or do you pass it down to a beneficiary? And well, what if that money was supposed to have been given to your father and it wasn't? Is that money lost? Do you say forget about it? Or is it still owed? I mean, make it make sense.
When the government bailed out the banks in 2008, they didn't ask the banks to feel guilty. They calculated what was owed and they paid it. When they forgave Paycheck Protection Program loans during the pandemic, they didn't require businesses to apologize. They calculated the need and they met it. When they subsidized farmers, oil companies, and corporations every single year, they don't demand emotional labor. They run the numbers and they cut the checks. But when it comes to black Americans, suddenly it's about feelings instead of finances. Suddenly it's about moving on instead of making whole. Suddenly it's about unity instead of accountability. And that, family, is where the hypocrisy reveals itself.
Now, when I think about unity, I think about a couple of things. I think about fairness, you know, not too much, not too little, just right there in the middle, you know, having a balance. And I think that's all people of color want. We want things to be fair. We want things to have an equal opportunity for everyone. And you remember when Black Lives Matter came out, and I know there was a particular group that utilized it for selfish exploitations, but to me, it was something deeper, because whenever I would try to have a conversation with anyone and I would say, yeah, Black Lives Matter, they would say, no, all lives matter. And I'm like, what aren't you getting about that? I'm not saying that all lives don't matter, but I'm saying Black Lives Matter. And they're saying, no, all lives matter. And I'm trying to figure out where the disconnect is, because logically speaking, I'm trying to present you with the fact that, hey, Black Lives Matter, and you're saying no. What are you saying no to? And it's always the fact of all lives matter. And that's not the argument. It's saying that, hey, you know that Black Lives Matter, right? And it's just, it's hard for people to grasp that concept because they just feel like black is less than. And whether it's history, whether it's propaganda that's been portrayed by the media, it just seems like that's ingrained in their logic and how they think, which makes no sense to me. Or is that just me?
Let me paint you a picture of what 400 years of wealth extraction looks like. Imagine your great-great-great-grandfather worked for free for 40 years. Not minimum wage, not below minimum wage, free. Imagine the wealth he could have accumulated, the land he could have bought, the businesses he could have started, the education he could have provided for his children. Now, imagine that wealth compounding over 6 generations. Now imagine that instead of building that wealth, it was transferred to someone else's family, someone else's community, someone else's future. That's not ancient history. Family, that's the foundation of the American economy. That's the bedrock of American wealth. That's the source of the racial wealth gap that exists today. And when we talk about $100 trillion in reparations, we're not pulling numbers out of thin air. We're calculating the compound value of stolen labor, denied opportunities, and systematic exclusion over 4 centuries. Dr. Thomas Kramer at the University of Connecticut calculated that enslaved labor from 1790 to 1860 was worth between $5.9 and $14.2 trillion in today's money. That's just slavery, family. That doesn't include sharecropping, convict leasing, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, educational exclusion, or any of the other systematic policies that continued well into the 20th century.
So are we just supposed to forgive and forget? I mean, that's the mindset of the black conservative, and I think that's what keeps us divided as people of color. You know, we're not willing to forfeit what's owed to us, and they have an understanding that if it's given, oh, it's just given to lazy black folks. And that's not the case, because you have a lot of people out here of color that are really trying, but because of the gap that was created by the compound effects of this, and they can't grasp that for whatever reason. You know, understanding that the money that was taken, the land that was not given, you think that's decreased in value? Absolutely not. I mean, billions upon billions have been made off of that. And well, how much of that was rightfully distributed to where it should have been given?
The Roosevelt Institute calculated that discriminatory housing policies alone cost black families over $200,000 per family in lost wealth. Multiply that by the millions of black families affected, compounded over decades, and you're looking at trillions in housing wealth alone. But here's where it gets really deep. Family. This isn't just about individual families. This is about entire communities. When black families were denied home ownership, entire black neighborhoods were denied the tax base that comes from property ownership. When black students were denied access to quality education, entire black communities were denied the economic benefits that come from an educated workforce. When black entrepreneurs were denied business loans, entire black communities were denied the jobs and economic activity that come from black-owned businesses. We're talking about a systematic extraction of wealth that didn't just harm individual black families. It enriched white families, white communities, and white institutions at our expense. Every dollar denied to a black family was a dollar that went to a white family. Every opportunity closed to a black person was an opportunity opened to a white person. Every acre of land denied to a black farmer was an acre given to a white farmer. This is what economists call a zero-sum transfer. It's not like the wealth disappeared. It's not like the opportunities vanished. They were transferred. They were redistributed. They were systematically moved from black hands to white hands, from black communities to white communities, from black America to white America. And the evidence is everywhere, if you know how to look for it. The racial wealth gap didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen because of individual choices or cultural differences or lack of effort.
It
It
was
happened
planned.
because of policy. It happened because of law. It happened because of systematic, intentional, documented exclusion that was designed to create exactly the outcome we see today. When the Homestead Act gave away 160 million acres of land, 93% of it went to white families. When the GI Bill provided educational and housing benefits after World War II, the vast majority went to white veterans. When the Federal Housing Administration started insuring mortgages, they explicitly excluded black neighborhoods and black families. When urban renewal programs demolished black neighborhoods in the 1950s and 60s, they called it Negro removal because everyone knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't unintended consequences. This was policy. This was law. This was the American government systematically transferring wealth from black families to white families for over a century after slavery ended. And the impact compounds over generations. When your great-grandfather couldn't buy a house because of redlining, your grandfather couldn't inherit that house. When your grandfather couldn't inherit that house, your father couldn't use that equity to start a business or pay for college. When your father couldn't build that wealth, you couldn't inherit it to buy your own house or start your own business or pay for your children's education. Meanwhile, white families were building generational wealth through the exact same programs that excluded black families. They were buying houses with FHA loans that black families couldn't get. They were starting businesses with GI Bill benefits that black veterans were denied. They were sending their children to colleges with wealth that was built on policies that excluded black families. That's how you get a racial wealth gap where the median white family has 10 times the wealth of the median black family. That's how you get a situation where white college dropouts have more wealth than black college graduates. That's how you get an economy where black families have been systematically excluded from wealth building for over 400 years. But here's what really gets me heated. Family. When we talk about reparations, they want to act like we're asking for something we didn't earn. They want to act like we're looking for a handout. They want to act like we're trying to get something for nothing. But we already worked for it. We already earned it. We already paid for it with 400 years of free labor, stolen opportunities, and systematic exclusion. We're not asking for charity. We're demanding payment for work already performed. When your ancestors were building the White House, the Capitol Building, Wall Street, and the NET railroads for free, they were earning reparations. When your great-grandparents were sharecropping and getting cheated out of their earnings, they were earning reparations. When your grandparents were denied GI Bill benefits after serving their country, they were earning reparations. When your parents were denied mortgages and business loans because of their race, they were earning reparations. Every generation of black Americans has paid into this system and been denied the benefits. Every generation has contributed to this economy and been excluded from the wealth. Every generation has served this country and been denied the rewards. And now they want to act like reparations would be unfair to white people? They want to act like it would be reverse racism? They want to act like it would be taking something away from people who earned it? Baby, let me tell you what's unfair. What's unfair is 400 years of free labor. What's unfair is systematic exclusion from wealth-building opportunities. What's unfair is being denied the benefits of citizenship while being required to fulfill all the obligations. What's reverse racism is a system that transferred trillions of dollars in wealth from black families to white families and then acts like the resulting wealth gap is natural. What's taking something away from people who earned it is denying black families the wealth they created through centuries of labor and contribution. But here's the beautiful thing about reparations. Family, it's not just about justice for black people. It's about justice for America.
Exactly.
It's about this country finally living up to its promises. It's about this nation finally paying its debts. It's about America finally becoming the country it claims to be. Because here's what they don't want you to know. Reparations would benefit the entire economy. When black families have wealth, they spend it in their communities. When black communities have resources, they create jobs and opportunities. When black people have capital, they start businesses and hire workers. When black students have access to quality education, they become doctors and lawyers and engineers and teachers who serve everyone.
Exactly.
The economic research is clear. Closing the racial wealth gap would add trillions of dollars to the American economy. It would create millions of jobs. It would increase tax revenue. It would reduce poverty and crime and social problems. It would make America stronger, more prosperous, and more competitive. But even if it didn't benefit white people, even if it only benefited black people, it would still be the right thing to do.
And that's the real problem. They don't want us to be independent. They want us to be dependent on their system. So whenever they want, they can simply apply pressure by putting their foot to our throat. I mean, think about it. Tulsa, Oscarville, Black Wall Street. Anytime we've made strives to try to close the gap just so that it's fair for us, what have they done? They've knocked us back just to, I guess, put us in our place. Or am I just making this up?
Because justice doesn't require permission from the people who benefited from injustice. Paying your debts doesn't require approval from your creditors. Making things right doesn't require consent from the people who made things wrong. And let me address the elephant in the room, because I know some of y'all are thinking it. How do you calculate reparations? How do you determine who gets what? How do you implement something this massive? Family, we put a man on the moon. We built the internet. We mapped the human genome. We created a global financial system that can transfer trillions of dollars around the world in seconds. Don't tell me we can't figure out how to calculate and distribute reparations. We have genealogical records. We have census data. We have birth certificates and death certificates and marriage licenses. We have documentation of discriminatory policies and their impacts. We have economic models and statistical methods and computational tools that can handle complex calculations. The question isn't whether we can do it. The question is whether we have the will to do it. The question is whether America is ready to face its debts and pay what it owes. The question is whether this country is prepared to choose justice over comfort, accountability over denial, reparations over reconciliation without restitution. And let me be clear about something else. Reparations isn't about punishing white people. It's not about making them pay for their ancestors' sins. It's not about guilt or shame or blame. It's about correcting a systematic injustice that continues to this day. It's about addressing a wealth gap that was created by policy and can only be closed by policy. It's about paying a debt that was incurred by this nation and must be paid by this nation. When Germany paid reparations to Holocaust survivors, they didn't ask individual Germans to feel guilty. They recognized that the German state had committed crimes, and the German state had an obligation to make amends. When the United States paid reparations to Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II, they didn't require individual Americans to apologize. They acknowledged that the American government had violated constitutional rights, and the American government had a responsibility to provide compensation. That's what reparations is about. It's about institutional accountability. It's about governmental responsibility. It's about national debt and national payment. It's about America as a country, acknowledging what America as a country did, and America as a country making it right. But here's what I want my black family to understand. Reparations isn't just about money. It's about recognition. It's about acknowledgement. It's about this country finally admitting that what happened to us was wrong, that it was systematic, that it was intentional, and that it had lasting consequences that continue to this day. For too long, they've tried to minimize our suffering. They've tried to downplay the impact of slavery and discrimination. They've tried to act like racism was just individual prejudice instead of systematic oppression. They've tried to pretend that the wealth gap is about personal choices instead of public policy. Reparations forces them to confront the truth. It forces them to acknowledge the scope and scale of what was done to us. It forces them to recognize that this wasn't ancient history. This was recent history with current consequences. It forces them to admit that the American dream was built on the American nightmare of black oppression. And that recognition, that acknowledgement, that admission, that's worth more than money. That's about dignity. That's about respect. That's about finally being seen and heard and valued as full human beings who deserve justice. But let's be real about the money too, because the money matters. The money is how you measure harm in this society. The money is how you provide remedy for injury. The money is how you make people whole after they've been damaged. And we have been damaged, family. We have been harmed in ways that can be measured and calculated and compensated. We have lost wealth that can be quantified and restored. We have been denied opportunities that can be valued and provided. $100 trillion sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But it's not more than we're owed. It's not more than we've earned. It's not more than this country can afford. It's less than what America has spent on wars in the past 20 years. It's less than what America gives in corporate subsidies and tax breaks every decade. It's less than what America lost in the 2008 financial crisis that was caused by the same banks that excluded black families from homeownership for decades. This country has the money. This country has the resources. This country has the capacity. What this country lacks is the will, the courage, and the moral clarity to do what's right. But that's changing, family. That's changing because we're changing it. That's changing because we're demanding it. That's changing because we're organizing and mobilizing and educating and agitating until justice is served. We're not asking anymore. We're not begging anymore. We're not hoping anymore. We're demanding what's owed. We're calculating what's due. We're organizing to collect what's been earned. And to those who say it's too late, that too much time has passed, that we should just move on, let me remind you that there's no statute of limitations on justice. There's no expiration date on debt. There's no time limit on making things right. Germany is still paying Holocaust reparations. Native American tribes are still receiving compensation for stolen land. Japanese Americans received reparations 40 years after internment ended. Justice delayed is not justice denied if we keep fighting for it. And we will keep fighting for it. We will keep demanding it. We will keep organizing for it. We will keep educating about it. We will keep calculating it. We will keep documenting it. We will keep pushing until America pays what America owes. Because this is about more than money, family. This is about justice. This is about dignity. This is about respect. This is about finally getting what we've always deserved. Full citizenship, full humanity, full participation in the American dream that we built with our blood, sweat, and tears. This is about our ancestors who died in slavery, never seeing freedom. This is about our grandparents who lived through Jim Crow, never seeing equality. This is about our parents who fought through the civil rights era, never seeing justice. This is about us finally getting what they never got, full compensation for full contribution. This is about our children and grandchildren inheriting wealth instead of debt, opportunity instead of obstacles, advantages instead of disadvantages. This is about breaking the cycle of systematic exclusion and starting a new cycle of systematic inclusion. This is about America finally becoming America, not just for some, but for all, not just in theory, but in practice, not just in words, but in deeds, not just in promises, but in payments. $100 trillion. That's what America owes Black America. That's what we've earned through 400 years of contribution and sacrifice. That's what justice looks like when you do the math. And we're going to keep doing the math until America pays the bill.
So what y'all think? Are those points valid or not? Because I feel like one of the biggest fears is what would happen if this money was actually in the hands of the black man. I think that's their biggest fear, thinking that it may be a revenge factor when that's not the case. Like, we just want things to be fair. We just want a debt that's owed to be paid. I mean, think about how it would actually benefit the economy. You know, you have those with a plan that will do what's needed with the money, and you have those that are fools that'll waste it away. But what are your thoughts? Let me know down below. And if you're not currently subscribed, hit that subscribe button to the right. Until next time, I'm out.
That boy is good.